hopefully you've already watched the basics video on how to handle our frozen doughs, and maybe you're feeling now you've made a few basic loaves, you want to try something a little bit different. So what we're going to do now is show you how really simple it is to put some inclusions into the bread. And in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to add some jalapeno and some Stilton in there to make a really nice cheesy loaf. As you can see, I've got a frozen dough, just like you would have done in the basics. It's been defrosted overnight, I've taken it off of the tray, and there it is, soft and ready to use. As you can see, I'm not worrying too much about keeping the shape on this one, because in this instance we're going to reshape it. Really lightly flour, you don't want too much flour on this, the less you can use the better, but obviously you don't want it sticking too much to the top. But there's the loaf, and now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten it out, and this is the same principle for any inclusion you're going to put in. There's no real science to it, it's fairly straightforward, but by flattening it out like that, you can then make sure you get some good distribution of the inclusions you're going to put in there. So this could be sun-dried tomatoes, it could be black pudding and bacon, makes a lovely breakfast loaf. It could be olives, all kinds of different things. But in this instance, just to show one that I particularly like, it's going to be the jalapeno and Stilton loaf we're going to make. So I've got in here some chopped up jalapeno peppers, I've got some crumbled Stilton, and I like to put a little bit of red Leicester in there. That's really just because it gives it a little bit more colour, adds a little bit of colour, a bit of interest when you look at it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to very simply sprinkle that over the bread. So I've got quite a flat piece of bread. You don't want too much, but you want enough to be sure you're going to taste it. Okay, let me put that in like that. That'll probably do us quite nicely, and it'll be a similar sort of covering for whatever filling you're going to put in there. Could even be a fruit one. You could put walnuts and raisins in here. Works absolutely fantastic. So really quite simple, anything you fancy. Then just push the inclusions down a little bit. What I do on a wetter inclusion, for example on this one it would be the jalapenos, I do when I chop them, I just pat them with a bit of cloth just to get some of the moisture out, because the less extra moisture you're going to put in there, the easier to handle it's going to be. So that's always worth thinking about. And then all I do is pretty much in the first instance roll it up. When you roll it up, you know you've got getting layers of the cheese and the mix all the way through it. Now you can, at that point, in all fairness, you could bake that off like that, and you get a thing very much like a thing called a stromboli. When it bakes, you put a slit across the top, the cheese will all come out, it's really lovely. So you could do that, that would be really simple, and that's probably the easiest thing on earth to do. But what we're going to do is just going to mix some of that dough in. So as you can see, I'm stretching it, and if you can see as I'm stretching it, you can see the cheese coming through. You don't want to overwork it, but you just want to make sure that it's not all just layers and that the cheese is in the bread all the way through. Once it starts to show through, which that is doing, that's about it really. If you look there, hopefully you can see the cheese is quite nicely mixed in. So now all we're going to do, pick up those extra bits on the top, and we're going to make it nice and round. Okay? So there's lots of ways you can do this. Practice, play with it. You won't hurt it, it's dough. Take out those frustrations, enjoy doing this. A little bit of flour if it's just getting a tiny bit tacky. Put it on your hands is always good. And then we just make it, this is basically what's called making a cob. So we're basically rounding it off quite nicely, and hopefully you can see that is now a lovely round ball. Okay? A little bit of flour on there, and we've got a lovely cob loaf. Okay? So what we'll do with that now is we'll use the banneton baskets again. So again, you would have seen us use the banneton in its most simple form when we did the basics video. What I'm going to use this time, I'm going to use the linen inside. The linen interior is really good because it comes out very simply with linen. All you need to do, dust that quite well. A little bit on there as well, don't be shy. Make sure it's nice, dusted like so. We drop it in there. And then literally, now that's in there, little dust on top, not too much. And just like we did on the basics, it's exactly the same principle. I'm going to take myself a little bit of pre-greased cling film or polythene, cover it over, and I will pop that at the back and leave that again probably about an hour at a normal ambient temperature until it's doubled up nicely, looking nice and big above the basket, and then we'll turn it out and bake it. And that's how simple it is to add inclusions to one of our loaves. Okay, so our cheese and jalapeno loaf is looking pretty fantastic now, nicely proofed and ready to go in the oven. So I put it over the back there, it's been proving for about an hour, and as you can see it's come over the top of that banneton basket really nicely, just risen up, just over the top there, easily doubled in size, which is what we want. So I've got my tray, which again I've dusted. I've just dusted a little bit more on here. And if you remember, we did this one inside the linen. So we've got the linen cover in there, which the beauty of the linen cover is, even if it sticks a little bit, it kind of pulls away. So just pop your hand underneath, tip it out onto the tray, and then you see how that comes on up and off it comes. The cheese can be a little bit sticky sometimes, so that works a treat. And as you can see, remember that little ball of cheese and jalapenos we had earlier? Now we've got this beautiful, lovely boule that's proved up a treat. I'm going to put some cuts in that. You want that cheese to sort of come out, so I'm going to do a pretty straightforward cross on top, I think. So we'll do one across there, one across there. Make sure you've gone deep enough, don't be shy. And then I'm going to pop that straight into the oven, 220 again, nice and hot, 220, so it's still got that oven spring. I've got my kettle, which if you've watched my basics video, you'll see it's exactly the same principle, whatever you're baking. In there, splash of water, just to give it that steam, to get that initial oomph, which lifts it up beautifully and gives it that spring. Again, 25 minutes at about 210, 220, and then we'll have a look at that and it should be ready and looking golden brown and very sexy. So we'll leave that now, have a look at it in a while. Okay, Stilton jalapeno loaf has now had 25 minutes in the oven at 220, and you can smell this one. I mean, this one will make your kitchen smell amazing. The smell of that toasting cheese coming through is just wonderful. And look at that. I mean, that is so what you want. It's a beautiful loaf. One of my favourites, this one. This one, while it's still warm, with a hunk of melting butter all over it, it's just wonderful. Like I say, this could have any inclusions you want in there. It's exactly the same process, but I think you'll agree that both looks stunning, and trust me, it tastes even better than it looks. That is a Stilton and jalapeno loaf. So easy to do, especially with our baker's bicycle bread dough.